Okay, two-step equations. Woohoo! We've got past the one steps, we're on to the two steps. Now, if you are a bit confused though, maybe you should go back and watch the one-step one. It does talk a bit more about equations and just, how to do the basics of this, because this is now going to get a little bit harder than it has before. Remember, an equation is, well, here's an equation. So we've got some algebra on one side, or some numbers, and we have some numbers or algebra on another side of an equal sign. So when I'm talking about both sides of the equation, we're talking about, say, one side is over this side of the equal sign, and the other side of the equal sign is the other side of the equation. And the equal sign just says that two things are equal. If this was a set of scales, if I roughly draw a little set of scales underneath here, if that was a set of scales, the things on the left weigh the same as the things on the right. So they would balance. If we had a little balance in the middle, that it would be completely level. I was just doing hand gestures there to help out all the people that can't see them on screen. Anyway, right, so let's try and solve this. Now, what does this equation mean? X is just a letter. We could have used any old letter, could have used some Greek letters if I'd liked. It doesn't matter. All it stands for is a number that we don't know yet. It's a mystery number. It's a mystery, as Toya said in the 80s, but that was before you were born. Now, this equation here is saying 8 times by that mystery number, so 8 lots of something, plus 6 equals 62. And what I'm going to do is undo that that little number journey through doing inverse operations. Okay, now actually I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do it over here anyway. If we started with my mystery number, what's the first thing that happens to it? Well, we don't add 6 first. We actually times it by this 8 first, partly because of Bob maths, whatever you want to call it. And so it's touching the x, it's timesing, so that comes first. The first thing that happens to my equation is times by 8, and that gets me 8x. And then after we've done that, we add the 6. So it becomes 8x plus 6. Now what we're going to do is do the inverse journey. We're actually going to come back the other way. We're going to do what these in this top right of the screen here. These things over here, pluses become minuses, times become divide, and the opposite of that is also true. So if I was coming back from 8x plus 6 and I just wanted 8x, I'm going to do the inverse of what happened to it before. I'm going to minus the 6. If I take away the 6, I'm just left with 8x, yeah? And if I add 8x, if I do the inverse there and I divide by the 8, I come back to my original letter of x, yeah? So we're sort of undoing the journey there, right? Okay, and I'm just going to get rid of that little bit of writing there. So I'm going to write down exactly what I would expect you to write if you were solving this on a pen and paper, which you're going to do in a bit. Now we've got a number touching the letter, and then we've got an add here. Always deal with the number touching the letter last. Always deal with the other bit first, because that's nice and easy to get rid of. A 6 there, positive 6, an ordinary 6. If I just literally take it away, it's going to disappear. It's going to turn into 0, because 6, take away 6 is nothing. And that will leave 8x on this side of the equation. But my equation is now unbalanced. I've taken 6 away from here. To keep it balanced, I must take away 6 from this side as well. Now 62, take away 6 is 56. Okay, 8 times something is 56, so we're already partway there. Now I don't want 8x, I only want one of them. So I need to go from being 8 of something down to 1 of something. And to do that, we do the opposite of times, because 8x means 8 times x. So I'm going to divide by the 8, divide by that number touching the letter. That's the rule, basically. And whatever you do to one side, though, you must do to the other as well. Why have I written times? I didn't mean times. I meant divide. It's very early in the morning. I've barely had any coffee. So 8x divided by 8 is x. This side we're going to divide by 8 as well. And there are 7 8s in 56. A bit of a blind spot for me, 7 8s, so I don't know why I wrote this question. But there are definitely 7 8s of 56. X equals 7. And that's it. That's our answer. Because 8 times 7, add 6 to it, you get 62. That is correct. We have used inverse operations. And really that took much more talking than it needed to. Okay, there's my next question then. So I've got 5x plus 15 is 125. Now I don't want this 5x and the 15 here. I want to get x on its own. Deal with the number touching x last. So let's deal with this thing first, this plus 15. And we'll do the opposite. We shall take away 15. So we do that, and we are left with nothing, because 15 take away 15 is nothing. And it just leaves 5x over this side of the equation. But remember, what we do to one side, we must do to the other. So we're going to take away 15 from here as well. And 125, take away 15 is 110. Now I don't want 5x, I only want 1x. So we know how to deal with this number touching the letter. So we divide. We are going to divide by 5. And we're going to do that to both sides of the equation. Now here, 5x divided by 5 just leaves one of the x's, x on its own. And 110 divided by 5 is 22. And if you get a tricky one, I don't mind using a calculator if necessary. But if you can do it in your head, or maybe use bus stop method. So x equals 22. That is correct. Yay! Because 5 lots of 22 plus 15 is 125. Right, 12 plus 6x equals 36. But look, the 6x is over here now. It's not on the left. Confusing. But it's not confusing because we do exactly the same thing as before. But remember, we deal with the number touching the letter last. That's the times we're going to deal with it last. We just deal with the the number on its own first if it's there. And 12, that's an ordinary 12. It's a positive 12. We wouldn't usually write positive, but it is positive. So to get rid of it, I will use the inverse. I'll use negative 12. 12, take away 12, leaves nothing. In fact, it just leaves 6x sat on its own. All by itself. Anyway, so we got minus 12 over this side. We are going to take away 12 as well, because what we do to one side of the equation must do to the other. Taking 12 away from here, got to take 12 away from here. And that will leave 24. 6 times something equals 24. And remember, to deal with that number touching the letter, we divide by it. Whatever that number is, we divide by that number. So 6x divided by 6 is x. And we do both the same thing to both sides of the equation. So 24 divided by 6 is 4. And that is right. X has the value of 4. That's my mystery number. Now, not only is x in the wrong place now, it's also negative. But that's not going to bother us because we're awesome. First thing, deal with the number touching the letter last. So we'll deal with the 30 first. We'll get rid of that. So we want to get x on its own. So we shall take away 30, because 30 take away 30 leaves nothing. But what you do to one side, you must do to the other. So we're going to take away 30 from there as well. Now on the left-hand side, we're just left with that minus 4x, or negative 4x, on its own. Now 18 take away 30, that's going to take us into the negatives, but that's fine, we can deal with that. It's going to be negative 12. I had a slight pause there because I was just double checking in my head. Yes, that is right. Now, negative 4x, I don't want negative 4x. I just want x. Now, if this was 4x, I'd divide it by 4 to get x. And this is the same thing. I'm not just going to divide it by 4, though. I'm going to divide it by that number touching x, which is negative 4. So you divide it by negative 4. Whatever that number is touching x, that's what you divide by. Now here's the trick, right? Because negative 12 divided by negative 4, well, negative divided by negative, we use our rules here, and that leaves a positive because the signs are the same. And 12 divided by 4 is 3, so it's positive 3. X equals positive 3. Yay! Right, what have we got next? Okay, what I want you to do now, I want you to pause the video. I want you to do these 4 questions on a piece of paper with a pen or a pencil or a felt tip or whatever, really, just as long as you're doing the questions. I want you to do the decent working out. I want you to write the answers down, and then you can unpause the video and see if they match my answers. Okay? Right, so press pause now. We have unpaused. Hopefully you have done those questions. Maybe gone for a jog or run, a cycle or something, or possibly just come straight back. fine, whatever. I don't know, don't need to tell me. Anyway, 4x plus 7 equals 27. Now I'm going to go through these a little bit quicker this time. We know we need to deal with the number on its own first. So we're going to take away that 7 because it disappears and turns into 0, leaving 4x on its own. But what I do to one side, I must do to the other. 27, take away 7 is 20. Okay? Right, this question, 6x minus 11 equals 19. Well, I'm going to deal with the 6 later because that's touching x. I'm going to deal with the minus 11 first. And I'm going to add 11 to get rid of it because that turns into 0. 11, take away 11 is nothing. But what I do to one side, I must do to the other. It's like a little musical going on here. So 6x is on its own. 19 plus the 11 over this side equals 30. So 6x's are 30. I only want one of them, so I divide by that number touching x, which is 6. So let's divide by that 6. We do it to both sides. 30 divided by 6 is 5. Right, 2 more then. Right, now am I going to take away 3 here? No, of course I'm not, because that's the number touching x. That's the times. I'm going to deal with the 5 first. I'm going to take away the 5, because 5 take away 5 leaves nothing except for the 3x on its own. But what I do to one side, I must do to the other to keep the whole thing balanced. 23, take away 5 is 18. 3x equals 18. I don't want 3 x's, I only want one of them. So I divide by that number touching x. I divide it by the 3, split it into 3 equal pieces, and each one of those pieces is worth 6. So x is worth 6. And lastly, remember, don't deal with the number touching the letter first, deal with it last. Let's deal with the 14. It's a positive 14, so we'll take away 14, because 14, take away 14 leaves nothing. Nothing, I tell you. But what you do to one side, you must do to the other. So we'll take away 14 here. And this will take us into the negatives, won't it? Because 4 take away 14 is negative 10. So negative 2 times x equals negative 10. But I just want a single positive x. So I divide by that number touching x, and you divide by whatever it is. In this case, it's negative 2. So that's what you divide by, because negative 2 divided by negative 2 leaves positive 1. So just 1x on its own. And over here, we'll divide by the same amount. We'll divide by negative 2. Now, negative divided by negative, use our rules here. So that leaves a positive answer. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Yeah? I hope you got those right. Now you can do some practicing though, because down here is a little link. Now the link's there only really as an emergency thing, because you should be in the show my homework post or email, whatever the homework was in. There'll be a link to the web page which will take you to here. Just if you can't find the link, then you can always type this tiny URL into the browser, and you will get a worksheet that's like this. And there are some questions, and I would expect you to write them down on a piece of paper or papyrus if you're ancient Egyptian maybe. And then I'd expect you to do some solving. Now your questions will be slightly different to mine, because every time you generate a new worksheet, it generates new questions for you. Sorry, I'm just doing this in my head whilst I'm talking. And so in this case, I've got the first answer as 7, so I would put 7 in the box and work on to the next question. And then when you click this button at the bottom, it will check your answers and you can see what score you got out of 10. Now, if you didn't do very well, you might want to practice and do it again. In which case, if you click on this button here, the new worksheet, it will generate a new worksheet for you. Don't click on show answers unless you're really desperate, because it will show you all the answers for every question, but then won't let you answer them. So you can't really cheat that way. You just have to click on new worksheet to get a whole new worksheet. Yeah. Do spend some time getting these right though. It's good practice, and it generates some tricky questions sometimes, but go for it. Enjoy. Good luck.